Hey, good morning, good afternoon, everyone, wherever you are tuning in from. My name is Susan Treadgold. I am the host of the High Performing Woman Talk Show, and my mission with this talk show is really to highlight female founders and female funders. Female founders get 2 to 4% of venture capital, and female founders are also few and far between, probably only about 10% of VCs. So on this show, I really like to shine a light on what they are doing. The episodes live on YouTube, so please go ahead and like and subscribe to the channel so you will not miss any of the episodes. Now, today I have a really interesting episode that I'm excited to talk about. The title is Reinventing Women's Health Inside the World's First FemTech Venture Studio. So, do you know that the global femtech market is projected to reach about 100 billion by 2027? That's huge growth. But women's health remains chronically underfunded. It gets less than 10% of healthcare venture capital. So it's time for that to change. I'm hoping with the great wealth transfer to women over the next 5 years, there's going to be 30 trillion in inherited assets changing hands, that this will make a difference. And I am thrilled to welcome Malin Frithiofsson. I'm doing my best with the Swedish pronunciation. She is the co-founder and CEO of Daya Ventures, who is doing something about this. So welcome, Malin.
Hi, thank you. I think you did a great job with the. I mean, even Swedish people have an issue with it, so you did great.
Oh, thank you. Let me just give a brief introduction. I mean, as I mentioned, you're the co-founder and CEO of Daya Ventures, which is the world's first FemTech venture studio dedicated to closing the gender gap. And I know you are passionate about building high growth, high impact startups that drive innovation in women's health across Europe, US, East Africa, and beyond. So welcome. I'm so thrilled to have you here.
I'm so happy to be here. As I mentioned before, I'm always happy when I get to talk about work because then my husband gets happy because then I don't bore him with telling him every day about what we've done.
Long-suffering husbands.
Yes,
That's okay. They signed up to it.
yeah.
So Daya Ventures. Now, I thought just to start off the episode, maybe we can just define what femtech is.
Yeah, and I think that's such a great place to start because femtech is a very new term. Like it was coined in 2016. So as always with new terms, it's kind of up for debate in society a little bit for the first years of what it's actually going to mean. But for us, and kind of the classical definition of it is technological solutions addressing issues that exclusively affect women, disproportionately affect women, or impact women differently. So basically technology to improve the health and well-being of women.
Yes, that's amazing. And I've been at some longevity conferences recently, and there's been a lot of talk about also, a lot of the protocols that are given out there, and technologies that are used were only ever tested on men. And and a lot of the things would not be recommended for women, and we're only starting to kind of do that research. I don't know if that's something that you've heard as well.
No, I mean, absolutely. I mean, both of you and I are actually like we are older than when it was mandated in the States to have women as part of clinical trials, and there's still not a mandate for that in Europe. So I usually I would like in joke and say that the Baby's Got Back song is older than when women's representation in clinical trials, and obviously if you're not testing things on women, then they're not going to have the same effect on women, and that's why we know that when it looks to adverse drug effects, women have it twice the size of men. It's that much.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. That's interesting.
No,
Well, that makes
so
sense. So
yeah, of course. I mean,
basically,
we're
women
not the same.
have been the guinea pigs The men got to do the trials, and then the women were the guinea pigs in real life.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's the same. I mean, even now when we have a little bit more, in the US you have a mandate, and in the EU we have recommendations, but women are still underrepresented in clinical trials. And the trials we're doing now is for the drugs that's going to be on market maybe in 30, 40 years. So we're just pushing this problem further and further down the road. So it's a huge issue.
Indeed. So I'd like to talk about this slide. Tell me about this. I mean, these are a lot of numbers,
Yeah,
but yeah.
And I think that the best number here is women are 50% of the population. I feel like sometimes you have to remind people of that, specifically investors that have a tendency to think that women's health is a niche market when it's the health and well-being of half of the world's population. But you touched upon how little of the healthcare venture capital is going into women's health. But if you're looking at the healthcare R&D, it's less than 5% of the capital if you take away breast cancer. And 4 to 5 studies are based on male physiologies. We covered that as well. And then the results of that is women are 75% more likely to experience adverse drug side effects. We have a longer time for endometriosis. The average is 8 years to get a proper diagnosis. And that's from the first time you see treatment for it. So it's good to put these numbers into perspective of it's not just that so little funding is going into it. It also that means that we get these 8 years and we get these 75% of adverse side effects of drugs. So the funding matters. It has consequences.
I was just at the Women's Venture Summit by Stella Venture. It's founded by the Stella Foundation. It takes place in San Diego every year. But I was amazed all of the things that came out. They actually had a pitch contest there. It was really great the way they did it. They had everybody in the audience get into groups and form their own venture fund. And they gave us monopoly money. And then the 6 top candidates that had been already competed went up there and pitched their ideas. And the woman that actually won was an OBGYN from San Diego that invented a new speculum, when you're doing the pap smear, because that was sort of an archaic metal, painful. Yeah, and she had an ingenious way of solving the problem. And anyway, it was great to see that. But everybody got to discuss it and then put their monopoly money in the boxes. And then she won $50,000 angel funding. So that was amazing.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I think that's also such a the speculum hadn't been reinvented for like a century pretty much. And it's the same thing with the gynecologist chair. And it was when it was designed, it was not with any type of empathy in mind. So which you can any woman who's ever laid down in this chair can definitely attest to that. It doesn't feel like it was designed with integrity and empathy for the user in mind, and there's no reason not to update these instruments.
I actually heard the history on it. It was originally 2 spoons that were that a doctor used to experiment on female slaves. Yep. And it was 2 spoons that he used. And so when they designed it, it was something similar. I mean, yep. How disgusting. But anyway, what inspired you to focus on closing the gender health gap through Daya Ventures?
So for me, I mean, my career has always been in venture capital and investing in startups, so working with early stage startups. But usually then people will ask you, oh, do you come from the tech side or the VC side? And I will always say I come from the women's side. So I actually studied women's studies and gender studies in university, and then I just very serendipitously got an internship at a VC while I was writing my thesis, literally just because it was in the same in the same building, and I had no idea that, you know, how hard it was to get a job in VC. And then I was kind of lured into that path then by a promise of my very lovely then female, you know, my then boss, who was a woman, who was like, well, if you want to make a change in women's life, yeah, you can do the route that you were planning. I was planning on going into politics, and, you know, I always knew I wanted to make women's lives better. And she was like, this is actually a great place to do that, because, you know, innovation, you look at what's happening in, you know, climate, you know, where politics has moved, you know, very slowly, but, you know, you can have these innovations that can, you know, reduce carbon emission, and you can actually push that needle very fast, very far. And you're like, you're a very impatient and entrepreneurial person. You're gonna be bored. You're gonna like knock your head against the wall of politics your entire life and be very miserable, which was very much true. I've always had the goal of making women's lives better. And you know, when I've been worked at that VC, you know, I tried to have influence over what we invested in, but, you know, it's not always easy. And then I've, you know, pretty much tried that in any place I've been, until I realized that, okay, I need to I need to have my own mandate. So I started angel investing, and I thought that the issue would just be, okay, now it's my own mandate. So now I can allocate money towards what I want to, which is female founders using research and technology to solve problems for women. And this was about 3 years ago, and I had a very hard time finding that type of startup then. So that's why we had, you know, Daya then decided to, okay, but what if we build the deal flow we want to invest in? So that's how Daya Ventures started, basically with a desperation of very much knowing what we wanted to allocate cash to, but not finding it, and then deciding to, okay, let's try building it instead.
Oh, I love that. So that was kind of my next question, which was how does the venture studio model accelerate innovation in women's health?
I actually think the venture studio. I mean, I'm very much a fan of the venture studio model, but because it's a very satisfying way of working, where it's, you know, you start with a problem, and then use the powers of technology and entrepreneurship to try to solve that problem, which is, you know, very therapeutic way of working. For us, what that looks like is that we will start with a problem within women's health, and then my husband just casually walking, you know, this is a live thing.
That's okay.
Yeah, my
it's
husband.
Real life.
We start with a problem within women's health, which there are obviously a lot of them. And then we invite researchers who's published on the topic. We invite doctors who specialize on the topic. You know, it can be, you know, specific clinics that specialize on a specific topic. Always patient advocacy groups, always women who live the problem. And then we basically do ideation for 2 months, where we have all these different disciplines in the same room. And that's why I say that the venture studio model works so well for women's health, because women's health isn't so complex. Usually when you're trying to solve issues within women's health, you have to talk to a lot of different disciplines of GPs, of clinicians. And you also have the context of the research being underfunded, and, you know, being these knowledge gaps that you have to work with. And then also in the context of the world today, where there's a lot of other barriers to health that are contextual and political for women. So it's an area that doesn't really lend itself too well for the kind of classical startup founder eureka moment. Like, you can be in the shower and have a, you know, oh, I come up with a new Uber. I don't think you can do that for women's health, because you have to it's like you have to you know, connect it so many different dots. It kind of has to be a process. So that's why I really like it. You know, we don't start with an idea. Like, it's no one having like a eureka moment and having a hero idea. We start with a problem, and then we labor our way into a solution, you know, with everyone who has kind of spent their career trying to, you know, understand a certain angle of the problem. Or
where are you finding the people to work on the problem?
So our process is, you know, after those two months of ideation, and that, I would say, it's very easy to find. So we've never had any problems finding researchers who wants to come and talk about their research. We've never had a problem having doctors come and want to talk about their specialty. So that has actually been super easy. And the ideas that come out of that is usually 1 to 2 ideas after a 2 months ideation, and then we work on the idea. So we have a tech team, we have a product team, we have a branding team, we have IP. So we do the first prototype, we do the first branding, we do the go to market, we do the first IP, and build out the first, at least the first MVP. And then we find the founders. So we go out and we search for someone who understands the core, clinical application, which is usually a doctor that's been part of the intervention. It's quite natural. Someone who understands the core technology, and then someone who has run a startup and raised VC funding before. Because we actually have a venture studio has the luxury of, as an investor, I would look at a startup and I would say, okay, what are the main risks? And the main risk is the market risk, it's the tech risk, it's the people risk. So when building our program, we were like, okay, how can we set up a repeatable structure that systematically de-risks these specific risks? So that's why we do the ideation, and we want LOIs from the ideation stage. So like, if none of the clinics want to sign an LOI to try it, then we're not going to build it. So we want LOIs and a market buy-in before we ever build anything. It will write a single line of code. And then the risk, we want to build the foundational tech to make sure that it's going to scale the way we want to, and things like that. And then secondly, we want to recruit the founders, because it's very frustrating.
Where do you recruit them from? Do you recruit from Sweden or other parts of the world?
Other parts of the world. So that's why we our portfolio, we incorporate the startup where we find the best founders. It means it's a little bit more of an admin hassle, but it's worth it, because it's definitely, if I had to, as much as I hate legal admin, I would say that I will take it any day to get the right founders into a team. So our latest venture is going to be incorporated in Germany, because that's where we found the best founding team to run it.
And do they then come to Sweden to work with you, or is it done remotely?
Completely remotely. So I would say, we're very good at working remote, and I think one of the reasons why we've had to be that is because we have a very clear vertical in women's health, and we're never going to find the best women's health experts for every one of these, for autoimmune disease, for endometriosis. They're not going to all be in Sweden. They're not even going to be in Europe. So if we want to have the best insights, we're going to have to do it digitally, because we want to work with the best out of the best in this very specific field.
That's great. That's great. Not having any. So this is a little bit about the model that you have.
Yes.
So we're going from ideation, venture creation, and so how long does it typically take?
Yeah. So the ideation is 2 months, and then after that, it's the venture creation stage. Where we have a check mark that it should be a prototype technology readiness level 3. There should be an IP strategy. There should be a brand and website and logo and things like that. There should be a founding team. There should be a go-to-market strategy. The first, waitlist or things like that. That's usually, we put aside 6 months for that. Sometimes it's faster, sometimes it's slower. 6 months is the timeline we want to keep to. And after that, that's when the startup incorporates and is spun out of our studio. And then we have an acceleration program where we work both with our own startups, but we're also humble enough that we know that we can create good startups, but we're not the only one creating good startups. So in the accelerator, we also work with external startups, and we work with US startups or Indian startups. So that's we accept startups from all over the world, and then we have a 6-month acceleration program that's mixed between our own in-house built startups and
right. That's great. So what are the biggest misconceptions about femtech that you were encountering?
Well, that it's niche. I think that's the I actually had this conversation with one of our a US-based portfolio startups that an investor would say that okay, why are you only doing women's health? Why are you not why aren't you doing men and women's health? And I was like, since when is half of the world's population considered like too small a market to start with? Like usually as investors we would say, okay, find your wedge and and build out from there. So it's sometimes it's like the logic doesn't logic when it comes to women's health. And also a misconception that, obviously, yeah, women is half of the world's population, but also women are the power users when it comes to health tech. We are the ones who are making 80% of the household healthcare decisions. We are the ones who are paying a lot more out of pocket for healthcare. We are the early adopters of digital health solutions. So, if you just take, the 50% of the gender out of it, and you're just looking at consumer behavior, women are a perfect market to address.
Yes, of course. Well, so here, I think these are some companies that you have worked with. I mean, from pregnancy, skincare, wellness, personalized wellness, birth trauma, menopause, like all sorts of things. Can you share a story of a startup from Daya that you see already making a significant impact?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, all of our in-house built startups are quite young because Daya started 2 years ago. So, our oldest startup is like 1 year and 2 months old. So they're all quite young. There's two. There was actually, I must be so proud when I saw all of them because I think they're all doing amazing. But two of them is actually funny because we have these two big conferences in Europe happening in the startup world at the same time, pretty much the week after each other. So there's Slush in Finland, which is, I think, one of the world's largest startups conferences, and then Web Summit in Portugal. And they have two.
Well, what is the second one? Sorry.
A Web Summit in Portugal.
Okay.
And so Trial Me, one of our startup, they went to Web Summit and they won their competition. They got number one in the Tesla venture competition. And then now next week, Omaya, the other startup, is pitching in the finals at Slush. So they were selected among, I think, 3,000, 4,000 applicants, and then they made it through the process. So
what? Tell me what they do.
So Trial Me works with research equity. So basically, as we talked about, women have been underrepresented in a lot of clinical trials, and that has, very wide effects. And it's not out of malice that women have not been included. It's actually a lot more expensive and difficult to recruit women for clinical trials, and that is because women have a lot more disqualifying factors. If we're breastfeeding, if we're pregnant, if we're taking contraceptions, like, it's trickier. And then women also have a lot of other barriers to participate in clinical trials because we usually have the child caring responsibility and elderly care responsibility. So it's really expensive and hard to recruit women participants in trials. And what Trial Me does is they created a platform where they bring in women, they do a first digital screening, and then they match them to clinical trials. So they actually reduce the cost of recruiting women by half because they already
that's great
in the platform and can match them. So I think that's going to be, making it easier for the researchers to be have gendered representation. And now also in the EU, they're moving towards making that a regulatory requirement. So it's, they're positioned well for that type of regulatory push. And then we have Omaya, that was actually born out of an intervention we did on birth injuries. So we invited a bunch of researchers and doctors and women who had gotten, severe birth injuries. And obviously a lot of things came up, and there's a lot of magic happening when you have the women and the doctors and the researchers in the same room. But one of the things that I didn't know beforehand was that having fear about giving birth, which is an increasingly a common problem, is this kind of ironic self-fulfilling prophecy, because if you're afraid of giving birth, you have a higher risk of having a traumatic birth. So getting a emergency C-section, suction cup, birth injuries, and then even postpartum depression. So then it's so strange things. If you had a traumatic birth, it's a higher risk for the kids getting mineralized teeth, which means that they have an easier time getting cavities. So it's like a snowball effect of, if a woman is afraid of giving birth, it actually, costs society and, her a lot of suffering and money.
Never heard of that connection between mineralized teeth. That's fascinating.
I mean,
never know how things affect other things. It's incredible.
And I think that that's such a also a thing for women's health, because we as we it's such an underexplored area, the female body still, like it's like in the bottom of the sea. Like we have so much to learn about it. But so what they do is basically it's a
Be like
digital.
the Jacques Cousteau Fund.
Yes,
Right?
instead of going to space, like we should explore what we have here. So they do a digital CBT program to reduce birth fear, which we also has clinical evidence that actually CBT is the best way to reduce birth fear, and thus saving hospitals a lot of money from these risks, saving insurance companies a lot of money, but also saving women a lot of suffering from this
So that's what Omaya is doing?
Yes.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, they're both great.
Yeah, well, good luck with their finals in that pitch contest. That sounds
Yes.
amazing. So I'm looking at the time. We are we're coming up on our time right now. So I just wanted to make sure people knew where they could get in touch with you. Do you have a preferred way? And different, if people want to invest with you, where should they go? If people want to pitch their idea to you, where should they go?
I mean, either email or LinkedIn is fine. I would say like I'm chronically on LinkedIn, but my inbox maxes out fast. But I check it a lot more than I check my email. So I think LinkedIn is probably easier. But I may be a slow responder, but I always respond. So I feel like it's my metaphorical door is literally always open.
That's great. And you do post. I mean, I've been following you on LinkedIn, and that's how we actually got connected. But you do some amazing posts, and I love your posts. So
I have fun with it.
thank you for doing that. You always have some very thought-provoking comments that you're posting. So Malin, I'm not gonna do your last name again.
You don't have to.
I succeeded the first time, so I'm not gonna press my luck. So
No.
I want to thank you so much for coming on the show today, and for your words of wisdom. And for those listening in, please like and subscribe to it so I can continue to bring more of these, informative episodes to you. So thank you, Malin. That was excellent.
This was so much fun. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure.